Rockstars, Eric Andreas, your guitar sage here. Today we're going to be talking all about tone. Welcome. It is August the 3rd. If you got here from one of the emails that I sent out this morning, then thank you so much. I appreciate you doing that. We like to let you guys know about these live broadcasts because we're doing all sorts of fun stuff. We had my wife on here last week, and today we're talking about tone. We're going to talk about guitars. So I've got the Les Paul, I've got the Strat, I've got the trusty 6120, the Gretsch, and I've got my Kemper out today. I've got the Dueling Ninja. We're going to be talking about that. I got that hooked up right now. And we're going to talk all about tone. So from the beginning to the end, okay? What I mean by that is from the guitar to your ears and everything in between. So a lot of people get obsessed about tone, and it's a good thing to get obsessed about, but sometimes people put the cart before the horse and they think that certain things are going to change their tone when in fact they should be looking at other things. We'll navigate that today. But essentially there's a lot of things that go from, I should even say, your pick. That's the first place, right? That's the first thing that's producing tone is your pick. To your strings, right? And that string sound is going to go into the pickups. The resonation of the guitar, you'll see some folks who just don't understand basic physics say that tone wood doesn't matter, that the wood of the guitar doesn't matter whatsoever. Those are folks that obviously have less math skills than I do, which I don't have a lot, but they don't understand basics about physics, so we'll talk about that. From the guitar through the cable, cabling matters. This is a very expensive cable, and the cabling does matter. You can get cheap cables. I've played with them for years. Do they sound cheap? Yeah, they do. Everything, you got to remember that everything in this mix has to do with your tone. So it's all right if you want to use a cheap cable. That's one variable. You know, if you're driving in a car, it's okay if you got one tire that's bald, right? It's okay. The other three are pretty good. But you can see what I'm saying. Everything adds up, okay? So we got the cable. It goes to the amp. We've got solid state amps. We have tube amps. We have software modelers like the Line 6 Helix. We have profilers like the Kemper amp. They're similar in that what they're doing is they're using algorithms to replicate amps. There's a lot of lore behind that stuff that we'll go into. So we got solid state amps, we got tube amps, we have modelers, we have profilers. From there, from the amp, it goes to some sort of speaker, and that speaker and the way that speaker is installed into a cabinet has a lot to do with the sound, okay? I should even say, okay, so when I talk about the Kemper, we're talking about effects that are built into that. So if you are traditional, which I am as well, I have traditional pedal boards that go into tube amps or solid state amps or whatever I'm running for that specific gig. But we're going to talk about effects. We're going to talk about effect order. We're going to talk about why you might want to change some of those effects around. Why you might want to change the effect order around. All that good stuff. We're even going to drill down to the individual bits and pieces like, okay, this is reverb, this is what the feedback for reverb is, that sort of thing. So we're going to drill down. Why am I doing this? Well, because there's a lot of folks that watch these videos, not just mine, but all the gurus, if you will, or whatever, teachers on YouTube, and they get very confused about what it means to create tone. So I want to simplify that for you so that you're not buying gear that you shouldn't buy. William, thank you so much for the donation. #1 fan. Thank you so much, buddy. That is so very kind. I appreciate it, pal. Thank you. I don't want you to go out and buy a bunch of gear, everything that Stevie Ray Vaughan played through, because you are laying in bed at night saying, if I only had that, and if I only had that, then I would start sounding like Stevie Ray Vaughan. Because what you're going to find is a lot of disappointment at the end of that. Now, if you already play like Stevie Ray Vaughan, then yes, maybe getting that identical tube screamer that he used, or putting 12s and 13s on your Strat and lowering it a half step and playing it upside down like Stevie, that maybe that's going to get you that tone that's going to take you over the edge to where now you sound exactly like Stevie, okay? But nonetheless, I want to avoid some traps for you, okay? So let's get into it. Very quickly, too, friends, before we start, I don't have a ton for you today other than we just got in 7, and I say 7, someone just bought one, 6 Dueling Ninja pedals. You know these are boutique. I won't go into all the detail. We'll listen to them today, but this is the Dueling Ninja. It's basically it's a dual overdrive pedal. There's kind of a Tube Screamer-esque side and a OCD side, full tone OCD. 2 of my favorite overdrive pedals. I wanted them in one compact space, but then I also wanted to cascade them, meaning I can have the one feed into the other. Because back in the day, before I came up with this idea, that's what I used to do. Is I used to take my Tube Screamer, and for solos and what have you, if I was playing the OCD, I would kick on that Tube Screamer, and it would overdrive the overdrive, and it just created a really silky smooth sound that I absolutely fell in love with. And vice versa. If I was using the Tube Screamer and it was solo time, I'd hit the OCD. It would give it just enough of a boost and enough sustain and overdrive and what have you that it just sounded beautiful. So we're going to look at that later too. Okay, so Ozman's saying tone is in the fingers. And Ozman, you know, there are things that guitar players say. There are colloquialisms. Is that the word? There are phrases that people say that really are not based in truth whatsoever, okay? So what I mean by that is tone is in the fingers. If you buy all of Stevie Ray Vaughan's gear and you want to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan, if you haven't learned the licks and you don't execute them like Stevie Ray Vaughan did, then indeed it's not going to sound anything like Stevie Ray Vaughan. That being said, Ozman, when we're talking about tone, what I'm talking about is the actual tone of the instrument. So if Mike comes over here and plays an A chord, I play an A chord, Zach Wilde plays an A chord, or Stevie Ray Vaughan plays an A chord, you're not going to hear a difference by that A chord, okay? So there's a little bit, even though people throw that one out there a lot, tone is in the fingers, the notes are, right? You got to play the notes, but the actual tone itself is not in the fingers. So I get where you're going, Ozman. I do get where you're going, but just understand that if I set this amp up a certain way, if I set Stevie Ray Vaughan's gear up a certain way and I go play a chord, same chord that he did, it's going to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan's setup. So the tone is not just in the fingers, okay? There's a few people who have also proven this on YouTube where they're playing, say, those heavy metal licks, but they're playing through a clean amp, right? Heavy metal guitar through a clean amp, and it sounds hilarious. It sounds terrible because tone is not just in the fingers. There's other things, okay? Okay, that being said, let's get into it, okay? We're starting with the guitar first. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to really bare bones this for you guys, okay? We're really going to get this stripped down, and then we're going to build up from there because that's the way you do it. When I first started playing guitar, I had a PV Razor, about a $250 guitar. My sweet father, that's what he bought, that's what he could afford, and that's what he got for me, and I was so in love with the guitar. I got an Audition 20 amp, which is a 20-watt solid-state amp. Very, very quiet. If I cranked it all the way, it was still pretty quiet. There's no way I was playing with a band with it, okay? That said, I worked with the tools that I had, and this is something that I will say often, is work with the tools that you have, because chances are, if you have a basic guitar and amp setup, you can do a lot with that if you understand how to extrapolate the tone from the instrument by messing with the volume and messing with the tone knobs and messing with the pickup configurators, you know what I mean? Like doing all that along with your amp. I mean, think about the almost infinite number of possibilities you could come up with just that, okay? A lot. So try not to always think, I need to have this other thing. I say that, I'm going out to buy another Kemper today, but there's other reasons for that, okay? gear matters, it does, but it's important to understand in what order it matters, okay? So what you're listening to right now is about the sound that I had when I was a kid. I don't even know if I had reverb on that amp. I don't think I did, okay? What's up, lead guitar? So this is about the sound of what I had as a kid. I say that, I didn't have an old guitar like this. I had one with a humbucker pickup. We'll listen to that in a minute. But so right now what I want to do is have you listen to the different tonalities of just the guitars. And the reason that I picked these three guitars is I should have one with a P90 here, but you're not going to hear that much difference between that and the humbucker pickup. But the two different styles, the main different styles of pickups that you're hearing today are single coil and humbucker. Single coil pickups are the ones that you see in the Strats and the ones that you see in the Telecasters. They look, you know, about the width of a finger. Whereas a humbucker pickup is about the width of two fingers, okay? That's because it's a double coil. It's two single coils that are pressed up against each other, and then the winds go around the whole enchilada, okay? And what you get is you get some different tones out of those. Filtertron pickups are yet another beast made by Gretsch, and they just have a certain sound. So instead of me talking about it, let's listen and you can hear the different tones that we can get from these instruments, okay? So, actually, I'm not even gonna mess with that whammy bar for a little bit here. Let's just do a little playing here, okay? Now we can mess with these pickups, you know, to get these kind of darker tones, you know. But what I'm doing is I'm gonna pull out the best, since we're not gonna do every iteration of the different sounds that we can get from all these guitars. We're gonna be here all day long. Then I'm gonna tell you, like, these are the sounds that I use that I find that specific guitar does best. So I can save you some time, okay? So you can hear this guy, right? It has its own little kind of, has its own tone, okay? Almost like a telly. In fact, with the band Gabriel the Bull that I'm playing with right now, there are two guitars that I use when we play out. It's this one, and I use a telly. I use the telly for songs that are a little bit more rocked out, that need just a little bit more drive. So let's cleanse the palate here with this guy, the famous Les Paul, right? This, by the way, is an R8. So it is a replica, or not a replica, but it's a reissue of a 1958 Les Paul. Since I don't have an extra $300,000 laying around, I figured I'd go with the reissue instead of the real thing. Now this guy's the real thing. That's a 59. The Gretsch. Okay, same thing now, right? So I'll play the same bit here, and you're going to hear a little bit of a difference. These are humbucker pickups. I'm playing on the treble pickup, which is the bridge pickup. What you heard earlier was the bridge pickup as well. I play in the bridge pickup probably in most guitars. Well, not the Strats. I'd say probably 75% of the time. The other 25% I'm using the other pickups. Okay, so here we go. Now, this would be, for me, literally, I would want some more overdrive with this guitar. And I'm gonna bring in the Dueling Ninja here in just a minute, just so you guys can hear, okay? Because there are certain pickups that in and of themselves sound beautiful. I think the Filtertrons in the Gretches sound amazing. I think Strat pickups, you know, especially some old Strat pickups, they just have a certain sound to them that are amazing. And you typically don't have to run them through a lot of overdrive. Just a little bit of grit's kind of nice, but when it comes to humbucker pickups, I've always thought that they're fairly boring sounding if they're not being run through some overdrive, you know? You know, it's just, there's not much there. Now, so what I'm gonna do here is, there's a white side and a green side of this Dueling Ninja pedal. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the classic, this is a classic tube screamer sound. So this is without, right? And this is all 10s, bridge pickup, everything's up, right? Now if I throw on this tube screamer, we get a little bit more of that rock and roll sound that you're used to, right? Let's turn this down just a little bit. Mike, let me know if I need to do something with my tone here. We're working with some limited gear here, friends, since we were just out in the desert with the band. The board, and well, the board's gone right now, so. Okay, so you got that vibe. This is kind of the kind of a fatter overdrive sound to me, and I like this one better. I don't use the tube screamer for much other than typically the Strat single coil guitars, Telly, and that sort of thing. Sometimes the Gretsch just to give it a little bit more oomph. But for me, the OCD pedal and the humbucker pickup are a match made in heaven. They belong together forever and ever. Amen. So here is, so this one's got some guts to it, right? Is that too hot there, Mike? I might pull that tone back a little bit. So you get the idea, right? Literally, now what did I do there? Is I said, I like this pickup or this overdrive more than this one. And it was as simple as that. And then I said, okay, it's a little bright sounding, and I turned the tone down a little bit, made it less bright. Why do I say that to you? Why am I bringing that up? Well, I'm bringing that up because I want you guys to understand that when you're coming up with your own tone, I get this question all the time from folks. And they say, how do I know what to set my EQ up in my amp? How do I know how to EQ my amp? Or how do I know how much overdrive, or how much treble, or how much reverb, or whatever? Listen, friend, you are the artist, okay? So you got to get this in your head. You are a creative, okay? No matter what lying voice tells you you're not, you are a creative. You wouldn't be playing guitar if you weren't, okay? So just get used to it. You're creative. You can write. You can create stuff. So start owning that, okay? Own that. You go up to your amp and you're like, I don't like that sound, like I just did. I was a little too bright sounding. That's why I have a tone knob on here. I just adjusted it, okay? It's literally that simple, but I'm sorry I have to say that because there are folks that they're like, what do I do? Well, what sounds good to you, you know? When people ask me, like, how should I set my amp, that's akin to, what should I eat for food today, Eric? Or they say, well, tell me what song I should learn. Well, what do you like? I mean, there's millions of songs. So it's important that you start owning this sort of thing where you just go, I don't like that sound. You start moving some knobs around. You're not going to break anything, okay? All right, so right there, you got that sound, right? Now, I told you that I would show you a couple things about this pedal as well. and I'm gonna right now. So we've got that OCD sound right now, right? Now, if I wanted to go into a solo, kick a solo off, man, I would do something like... If I want that tone, great. If I wanted something more overdriven, right? I could sit there, I could go have a bite, and there you go. So that's what's known as the Dueling Ninja mode of the Dueling Ninja pedal. Basically, you have off, obviously. You have the green side, you've got the white side, and then you can cascade them together for some really cool effects. So, and here's another little bit here, right? So we got like... So it really drives, right? And then I'm back to, without the Dueling Ninja section, here's just the straight up OCD side. You can hear quite a bit of difference. It's not as aggressive. Now I'll turn it off entirely. Now we're back to that original sound. When your ears get used to high overdrive and then you go back to a clean sound, sometimes it's like such a disparaging difference that you're like, good night, I don't hear any overdrive. But there's overdrive happening there, okay? Okay, all right, so let's move on to the Strat, okay? Because again, now when you're listening to music like heavy music, Aerosmith, AC/DC, Metallica, humbucker pickups almost all the time, okay? Les Pauls, EMGs, doesn't matter, ESPs, doesn't matter, they're usually double coil pickups or what we call humbuckers. We call them humbuckers because, and you won't hear it through this setup because number one, the guitar is a well-made guitar, and then also I've controlled the sound with noise gates and that sort of thing within the Kemper, and the Kemper is really amazing for that sort of thing. But typically with single coil pickups, especially under stage lights and that sort of thing, especially fluorescent lights, any sort of electromagnetic frequencies coming from plugs, wall warts, extension cords, fluorescent lights, these are fluorescent, then what happens is that interference, people say all the 5G and all that stuff, that's nonsense. It's absolutely not nonsense. It's absolutely happening. Just because you can't see it like electricity or gravity, it's really there, friends, and it's hitting us all the time. So these electromagnetic frequencies are happening all the time, and guitars, I might not be able to do it here, but no. Usually I can hold a Strat or Tele up to a light and you hear it.
Except that's LED, so that's not going to work.
Except what?
Those are LED.
Oh, these are LED?
Yeah.
Okay, so it probably wouldn't do the same thing, right?
Right.
No, but here you go. There's an example. Here's my iPhone. I'm sure that's perfectly safe to be holding to your head. So EMF frequencies can be picked up by the pickup itself, very often by the pickup. They can be picked up by a cheap cord, not that this is cheap, but one that isn't shielded properly. This is what you're paying for when you buy expensive gear. When you buy a Mogami cable for $50, people go, that's crazy. They got a cable over here for $5. Yeah, of course they do. There's also a Porsche, and there's also a Hyundai, okay? And there's nothing wrong with Hyundais. They're good cars, especially for the money. But if you want it to drive like a Porsche or Lamborghini, you got to get one of those, okay? So it is what it is. Find out where, if you don't have the money to do certain things, you can skimp on certain things. Just understand what it is that you might be getting into or might not. You might be able to get away with some stuff, okay? So here we go. So now you can hear right out of the gate here that this is more of a snappy type of sound, right? It has more of what I think of as a hollow sound. Whenever you hear people talk about wines and they're like, oh, I smell some cherry and there's a slight hint of apricot and burnt tire. It's beautiful. And you're like, really? You're getting all that from that grape? That's crazy. Well, what we're doing is we're associating things that we know with a wine. And you could do the same thing when you're talking about guitars. Sometimes it's hard to describe what it is that you're hearing, but you just love the sound, okay? But to try to describe, if I was trying to describe that sound to you, I would say, well, to me, it's kind of percussive. It's got that kind of, snappy sound. Right? I wouldn't do that as much on a humbucker type guitar because it's not going to have the same sound. So absolutely, there are certain guitars that are going to get you certain sounds. And if you need an education in this, then try some different guitars. Borrow some guitars, play somebody else's guitars. I would advise you to run it through your own setup, because if you're taking a guitar and in fact, every time I buy a guitar, I can get a basic idea for how it sounds, but really until I run it through my gear and what have you, I'm not completely satisfied because I don't know. So a lot of times when I'm buying guitars, I go into the store and I say, hey man, I love the way this thing sounds. I'm gonna buy it right now, but if I don't like it, I'm gonna take it back. Are we cool? And they're like, yes, of course. So then I'll bring it back. And it's happened maybe once for me, okay? So understand that, when you're running this stuff, keep it all the same. So if you're trying guitars, we had lots of audio difficulties right before we went on for about a half hour. We were trying different things out. Was it the microphone? I don't know. Let's try a different microphone. Is it the cable? Let's try a different cable. Was it the mixer? Let's try a different mixer. So literally you have to keep variables the same when you're comparing sound. Because if you say, let me see that your Strat, and you go to play a Strat and you plug it through your buddy's guitar, through his amp, and his amp sounds like crap, now you think Strats sound like crap, okay? Because you hadn't done it scientifically, okay? So, important to do that. Another thing that I did, and we're gonna get into cables next, so we'll get into picks and stuff like that too. Something else that I did back in the day was, before I had money to buy some nice guitars, I've always, I say always, for the good part of my life, I didn't have money to buy real nice guitars. So I bought what I bought, and I got the sound out of the guitars that I could get, and that's it, okay? And I did really well with that. But then eventually was able to buy some new guitars, some vintage guitars and what have you. But what I did is, I think in the early 2000s or so, I forgot what year it was, Line 6 came out with a guitar called the Variax. And I still have one. I have the kind of newer rendition of it now. But back in the day, I bought a guitar called a Variax. They have them still. You can buy them, a Variax 300, a Variax 500, and a Variax 700. And they have newer ones now as well. But you can get them for real cheap still on eBay. What they are modeling guitars. And basically a switch that allows you to switch through 25 different guitar models. And they're fairly impressive. I mean, is it like owning those 25 guitars? Absolutely not. But it does a really good rendition of them. And that was a great way for me to educate myself on guitars that I still to this day don't own. I don't own a 12-string Rickenbacker, but I know what a 12-string Rickenbacker sounds like because I have a guitar that models it. I've listened to enough bands that use those to where I have a basic idea. So that's a great education if you want to, I talk all the time about the Line 6 M9 pedal, I think it is, the multi-effects pedal that allows you to, it's got all the effects in it, and it's like $120. And it's great, even if you don't need all those effects, because it really gives you an education of effects. Same thing with that Variax guitar, that Line 6 guitar. And Line 6 makes some great stuff. I used to be exclusively Line 6. Now I don't use any Line 6 stuff. Now I'm a Kemper guy. I'm in love with the Kemper stuff, okay? All right, that's it on guitars. Tone woods and stuff like that, the wood does make a difference, but you know, again, here there's certain things that aren't going to make as much of a difference as other things. And if you look at it like, okay, here are the really important things, and then you work your way down, then you're going to be in a much better place, because you're not going to be looking for wood that's 50 years old thinking that that's going to make the sound that Stevie Ray Vaughan had, as opposed to that maybe 1% of his sound, whereas 20% of his sound has to do with his guitar, and 50% of the sound has to do with his amp and his settings that he had on his amp, and you know, and so on and so forth. Using Pareto's rule, we want to focus on the stuff that's going to get us as far ahead as possible without getting into all the minutia. Okay, cool. All right, good, nice. All right, good. Thank you so much, Willie. 164 watching, 54 likes. Mash that thumb button. Yes, please do, friend. If you don't like this, hit that thumb button twice. Okay, or 3 times for that matter. Okay, here we go. Here we go, cables. Okay, now the deal with cables, I've said it before, there are folks that have certain reputations. This is Runway Audio, and I think these guys are in Nashville now. I need to go to their shop sometime. Runway Audio, they make killer cables, and they make them in different colors and stuff too. So yeah, check them out, Runway Audio, they're amazing. And Mogami, I use a lot of Mogami cables. It's just that Runway sent me this one, and I love, it's a long cable and it sounds fantastic. The cabling matters, it does. If you can afford it, get some good cabling, just be done with it, especially if they have lifetime warranties. You literally, with Guitar Center, with Mogami cables, at least in the past, I can go in there and say, this cable broke, and they'll hand me another one. No filling out nothing, okay? That's cool. So that's worth a $50 cable, because I can't tell you how many cheap cables I've gone through in my whole life. Okay, so cabling matters, okay? Good cables. Let's go straight to the amp, and then we're gonna go down to effects, because effects are gonna are gonna take more time. When we're talking about amps, there's really 3 basic categories in my opinion. There's tube, there's solid state, and I'm putting modelers and profilers in the same category, because I honestly don't know. I've read what the difference is and I still don't get it. But essentially a modeler or a profiler, they're very similar in that they create algorithms to replicate guitars, okay? They create algorithms to replicate, or amps I should say, and effects. Any effect that you have is replicating something, right? Most of them are doing it digitally, some of them are doing it via analog, but nonetheless, they're replicating, okay? They're replicating some sort of thing. Now with amps, tubes, speakers, the transistors, how that amp is modded, what kind of tubes you're using in regards to brand, what you're using in regards to power. There's lots of things that go into the actual characteristic of an amp. We're talking just a raw amp. Take the guitar, plug it in. What's that sound like, right? And I've owned an ungodly amount of amps. You name it, I'm sure I've owned it before. You know, all the basics, Fenders and Marshalls and Mesa Boogies and Gallien-Kruger, and I mean, just go right down the line, even from the cheap amps I've had growing up. I've had lots of different types of amps. And for me, I find that the Kemper, 99.999% of all the time, it answers any tonal issues that I'm going for, and it does it immediately. And if I can't find it, then I can always go online and download somebody who's profiled an amp. The difference between a profiler and a modeler is that with a modeler, you're kind of creating it with the software. With a profiler, yes, you're creating it with the software, but you have to capture the amp first. You have to profile it. So let's say I had Eddie Van Halen's, you know, the amp that he used for the first album. If we had that here, we could hook a microphone up to it, run it through the profiler and we capture all those tones. And literally it just takes that, the characteristic of it, puts it in the box, and then you can tweak the EQ and the all, okay? But you can add effects to it. Okay, so the difference between solid state and tube, obviously solid state is using solid state technology. It's not using vacuum tubes. And most guitar players who have been playing for a while will say that there is a sound difference between tubes and solid state. I would be one of those that would say that as well. I've owned many tube amps in my day, and I've owned some solid state, and they just sound different. They respond differently to the way that you play them, right? So if you're playing something quietly, right, they usually have a more dynamic range. So like the quiets will be quieter and the louds will be louder than if you did it in solid state, which it would take the louds and make them more, bring them down more, and it would take the lows, the very quiet sections, and it would bring them up. So it's more like a, it's a smaller bandwidth, if you will, dynamic bandwidth. That's the differences that I found. That being said, they make some great responsive solid state amps right now, okay? So again, you got to do your homework. There is no one size fits all. Another lesson that you got to learn from this. There's no one size fits all. There's what's best for you. Sometimes it's what's best for a specific song. With the way that I run my setup, sometimes it's a specific amp or sound for a specific section of a song. Just depends on how detailed you want to get, okay? Okay, so, and then we have the modelers and the profilers. The reason that those are so popular these days is, number one, the technology is new, but two, you can fit so much into a box. This box here, $1,700. I know it sounds expensive, but literally the amount of amplifiers, I'm getting at least hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of amplifiers in that one little box, and thousands of dollars worth of, tens of thousands of dollars worth of effect pedals in one little box. It's a computer, okay? So essentially, just like your apps and everything, you can download an app, you can download patches, and you have that forever. Whereas if you have a solid state amp or tube amp that doesn't have that technology, you have the characteristic of that specific amp. And that can be a great thing, especially if you're AC/DC, Angus Young, and he just has that one sound that he goes through, and then boom. Like, why would you want anything different? He's not going to use a Kemper. Running through a giant set of Marshalls is way cooler anyhow, right? So there's a little bit of a social weirdness about profilers and modelers, in my opinion, especially here in Nashville or in any place where you have folks who have very expensive amps, because sometimes they'll say, yeah, but it just doesn't sound the same. I'm saying that I've owned all of these amps, or many of these amps, and to me, I am very, very satisfied with what the Kemper does. So that's one guy's opinion. There's other people that will say other things. Just also, when you're listening to someone talk about gear, make sure they're not coming from a place of ego, okay? If I said this 1959 6120 plays better than any Gretsch ever, it's a 1959, man. That's ego right away, right? I bought a 2006 Gretsch guitar this weekend. I have not done a shootout with this one because it's Greg Ellis, my guitar tech, has it right now. But when I played through that guitar the other day, it was about a fifth the cost of this guitar. And to me, and I haven't done a shootout with them yet, but I believe that the cheaper guitar sounded better, and it 100% played better. So it's one of those things that I find that in Nashville, it's not a very popular thing to be very honest like that. I feel like most people will just default to whatever's the expensive thing and what have you, and so it seems a big mystery. And to me, it's there's BS behind it, and there's ego behind it. If a guitar sounds better and it's older, great. If it doesn't sound better because it's older and you spent a lot of money on it, it might just be a museum piece, okay? So that's my rant for the day, sorry. All right, so now let's go into some effects, okay? What you're hearing here is pretty simple, okay? And in fact, I'm gonna switch guitars here. Because everyone knows in 1959, 6120 sounds the best. That's the other thing. There is no best, right? There's only what's best for you or what you believe is best for a song or, that sort of thing. So for me, in this band that I'm playing, which is very cowboy heavy type guitars, these guitars are they're used in that kind of music. They're used in country and western and rockabilly and just all that kind of deserty type stuff, right? All right, so what you're hearing here is, for those of you that can hear the reverb, you can hear it's a certain kind of reverb. It's known as spring reverb. It's not as smooth as, say, a plate reverb, which you can find in a studio. It's where they take the audio and they run it through a giant steel plate, and then they mic that plate, and then you have this beautiful shimmery type of reverb. This is more like an old school Fender amp, where it has spring that they ran the sound through, okay? So that's what we're hearing there. And we're hearing just a slight bit of overdrive, okay? If I cranked this overdrive up, okay, we're hearing more growl, right? You would expect that in a more aggressive type song. So starting off the effects chain, we'll talk about overdrives. That's what we're doing, okay? So the overdrives, that is more of like a just kind of cranking the amp up. Can be replicated with the Dueling Ninja with either one of those sides. So for instance, let's go back to the clean sound. If I wanted to, kick on the, that's done with an outside pedal here. It can be done with inside the box as well, okay? So when we're talking about effects, usually this is the effect order, okay? And this is loose, but if you pull this up 100 times on the internet, you're gonna find it's very, very close to what everybody says. And there's a reason for this, okay? It doesn't mean that you can't go outside of this. Again, rules are meant to be broken, but if you're gonna break a rule, make sure you're doing it for a good reason, not just to be different. Oh, it drives me nuts. People just trying to be different to be different. We see through it, and it doesn't look very cool. So if you're going to do something different, make sure there's a reason behind it. Don't just be weird. I don't like that. Do you? I don't. Anyhow, effect order is going to go like this. Usually at the front of your chain, so your guitar, your cable is going to plug into this first. A volume pedal or a wah. Those are usually in the front end. Wahs fall in the family of what we call filters. So an auto wah would do the same thing, or a Mutron pedal would do the same thing. Notch filters, sometimes EQs can go in the front. I'll see people do that a lot. But wahs and that sort of thing typically go before the overdrive section, because if you're using a wah with overdrive, it usually sounds a little wonky to put the wah afterwards, okay? And also the reason that we have the volume there is it feeds into the other effects. But there's some reasons why you might want to have it on the other side. Nonetheless, that's usually the order, okay? Let me just tell you the order, and then we'll kind of talk about the reasons why that is. Volume and wah in the beginning. Your overdrive section, which are going to be things like overdrive, distortion, fuzz pedals, that sort of thing. And you're usually going to put them in the order of intensity. So since the blues screamer, the screamer, green screamer, or blues screamer, a tube screamer, is not, it's not a pedal that overdrives an immense amount, like say like the Wampler Sovereign pedal, which is like an Eddie Van Halen type tone. You're gonna find that it's better to put, I say better, in my opinion, to put those lesser overdrives up front. And then if you want to boost one of those other pedals, you can do it with the lesser one. If you do it the other way around, it just, I've just found it to not sound very good, okay? Okay, after your overdrive section are modulation, which is flangers, chorus, phasers, that sort of thing. So things that kind of give those, well, let me see. Do I have one? Yeah, I do, right? So this is going to sound kind of funny coming from a 6120, but phaser that you're hearing there, okay? How did I get into that? Phasers. What was I talking about? Oh, modulation. Okay. Then we have delays, which would be... now, I use this a lot with the band because... here's why. I'll tell you why. Normally, I don't use a lot of effects. Or if I do use effects, I use them subtly. Okay? Because I want the guitar to do the talking and less of the effects. That being said, sometimes you just need to have a certain effect. And with the band that I'm playing in right now, there's drums and 2 nylon string guitars. Nothing else, just me. So when we don't even have a bass player right now, we're looking for a bass player. And so I have to fill in a lot of space. Because of that, when I get done hitting a chord, if there's not some sort of delay tail or reverb tail or something happening, it can be a little like, ooh, man, that's very sparse, right? So I'm always throwing a little bit of ear candy into this music. So I'm using lots of delay, I'm using lots of reverb. So what do I mean by delay? Okay, so what I mean by that is this. Delay is when we hear that bop, bop, bop. Now I'm going to turn the reverb off. Okay, so now we're just hearing delay. Okay, and we have this pop, right? That's delay. We'll get into more of that in a minute. This is reverb. So it's like we're playing in the sewer or a giant hall. Okay, that's reverb. And then lastly is noise gate or some sort of noise suppression unit, a hush pedal. We call them hush pedals by the brand name Hush, or Rocktron. Rocktron is the brand. They make a pedal called Hush. And so what this does is basically whenever you run effects, what it does is it creates line noise, okay? Little artifacts that come out because that's what they do. They alter the sound, and so even if you're not playing, sometimes you can hear it. Now, let me see if I can pull this up and get such a sound here. If you hear just a little bit of hiss happening right now, hear that little bit of hiss? You might be able to hear that. If not, with the noise gate, I can take that out, you know? And so what the noise gate does is this, and all of them do this approximately, is if your volume of your guitar when you pick comes up to here, and the line noise, the stuff you don't want to hear like hiss or the sound of the phaser as it's going, that sort of thing. If you don't want that, which no one wants that, then you set the noise gate to block that out. So it may be under this area here, and then your guitar, in order to hear your guitar, you have to play it above this note, okay? And so it's something, it's just basically a knob that you would turn to where you're like, yep, it's knocking out the extra sound that I don't want, but can I hear my guitar? Is it affecting my guitar tone? You play, and if it's not, then it's in the right place. If it's affecting your guitar tone, you turn it down some more. But there's a there's a fine place where it takes out the unnecessary noise and lets the good noise come through. You're playing, okay? Noise. All right, so that being said, let's kind of go into it a little bit. So this would be an example of volume swells, right? So now that you have the basic idea of some of these effects, let's take it from the beginning and we'll go down into how I use them so you can get a better idea. I wish, friends, that I had moved quicker on this. I'm sorry. I'm going to go through this quickly because I want to get to your questions, okay? So, right, so we have this sort of sound. That's a volume pedal, and so I have a pedal down here that's going back and forth like this. So when I hit a chord, it's off, and when I mash my foot down, I can get those sounds. Okay, that's what that does. Wah-wahs, you've heard them before, right? Let's see. Sorry, I have to really mash it down. So that's a wah right there, you know? Okay, those go in the front of the chain. All right, let's get to... Okay, overdrive, we've talked about that enough, infinitum. Again, friends, link below, I think we have it in the link. Do we have the link for the Dueling Ninja in there?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you, brother. If you want the Dueling Ninjas, friends, we just got a small stack in. We got 7 of them in, I think. We just sold one last night. But they're gonna go quick, they always do. We run out of them right away. So if you're wanting one of these, friends, do it. Or you can spend a lot more and buy 2 pedals, and it won't do what this one does, and it will take more room up on your pedal board. Okay, so Dueling Ninja is available now. You know where to go to get those. Okay. Okay, we've talked enough about overdrive. Fuzz is just another style of overdrive, if you will. It was used a lot in the 70s, and it's a cool sound. See Smashing Pumpkins for that, okay? We're gonna skim over some of this stuff here. Not skim over, we're gonna go quickly. Modulation, we talked about that. Things like flangers, choruses, phasers, that sort of thing. Let's talk about delay. Typically for delay, hear that delay in there, and it makes it nice for these chords because after I get done playing, if I didn't have that, right, it's gonna sound like it's not as fun, in my opinion. So that's what we use delay for. Typically, I like to do, you know, quarter note, eighth note, dotted eighth, dotted quarter. It depends on the song, right? It just truly does depend on the song. So we've got a song that does this really cool kind of solo bit here. Let's see. It does this cool kind of solo bit, and for the most part for this song, I'm using that delay right there. That sort of thing, okay? Mike, I just lost my connection to the computer. I don't know if you can set me up there again. Not that I'm looking at the comments at the moment, but okay, so then what I do is I've got another delay setting here, which it's kind of a dotted quarter, so now I'm doing this solo and it's like that sort of thing, you know. I can do that, Mike. Yeah. So it has a certain sound about it, kind of dotted quarter, dotted eighth type of thing. But I typically use delay to just fill out the sound a little bit. Okay, reverb, we talked about it. Is this kind of, you know, and that just sounds nice because if that wasn't there at all. Not much there, right? And again, we've got the noise gate. And Mike, that signal is not coming through. Can you bring that notebook to me, and I'll just answer this in real time with the computer in my lap. All right, friends. So I know I kind of whipped through that quickly, but still, we literally spent an entire hour doing that. So let me get to your questions because I want to make sure that you guys are all squared away when we're talking about tone. There is no right tone. Okay. Again.
Try to grab the keyboard and type your.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Mike.
It's already there. You just gotta type it.
Yes. Thank you, sir. You are a ninja.
Probably why you can't see it. If not, I'll bring it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, buddy. Okay. Yeah. I know we whipped through that, but did we? That was an hour. So I want to make sure that you guys get your questions answered. Okay. Go ahead. Let's hit me up with it. Really quickly while I'm waiting, friends, we're moving to a new studio this week. We're so excited about it. So I'll let you know more about that. All caps and a question mark if you would, okay? Here we go. Looking at some questions here. When you say front of the chain, do you mean plugged closest to the guitar? Yes, closest to the guitar. Front of the chain. So think about your guitar is the beginning, right? And then we're working down the chain. So the first effect would be the first in the chain. Yes, that sound does sound very much like the Ventures. They have that kind of, it was just a certain sound, man, surf guitar. I did not mention a compressor because now compressors are typically used when you're playing funk guitar, some sort of very clean guitar. It's used in country music, chicken picking, that sort of thing. It's used a lot in there. I say used a lot. It's used often, but not a lot. They don't just crank it up. It's just used often. Those are the sorts of things. The devil's in the details. People say, "Oh man, I hear that they use so much compression in country music." It's like, no. They use it often for chicken picking, but they don't use a ton, okay? When you're using overdrive, it's also compressing it, so that's why I don't use compressors that often. The noise gate typically goes at the end of the effects chain because you want to take all the, if it goes after the delay or after something else or before that thing, then that effect can still create noise problems. Does that make sense? So you want the noise gate at the end after the reverb to take out any of the noise when you're not playing the guitar. Okay. FM 77, I'm using the flanger, the phaser that I'm using is the Kemper one, okay? Otherwise, I'm using the Phase 90, the Eddie Van Halen one. That one's a cool one. But typically, I'm using what's inside of my profiler there. Knitting is saying, pain in the fingers while pressing strings. What to do? Keep playing guitar. Welcome, friends. That's like taking boxing and saying, man, it hurts when he hits me in the face. Yep, it's gonna. That's the part that people don't like. But now have a guitar player who's a real guitar player. If you're a new guitar player, what I mean by that is somebody who's been playing for a while. Go to someone who's been playing for a while, hand them your guitar, and see what kind of reaction they get. If they go, oh God, this thing plays terribly, then you're fighting against your guitar. But other than that, the only thing that you can do, if your guitar action is set too high, if it's not something like that, then it's literally just like you just got to get used to it. And the way to get used to it is by doing it a lot, okay? By playing a lot. Any tips on heavy tones, gain stacking, active pickups, boost, not scooping mids, but still is powerful? Thanks. Bobby, that's a lot. Obviously make sure you're using a humbucker pickup. Make sure it has lots of gain. You want to start with those heavy tones. You want to start with a high output pickup because that is the first in the chain. And if you're trying to compensate for that sort of thing, like compensating for anything typically doesn't work out so well. So like if the gain on your pickup's not very hot, then you're going to be constantly trying to do it with effects and the overdrive on the amp, and now it's just getting loud and still not getting the tone that you want. So make sure you have a good high gain pickup. As far as active or passive, I don't know where that obsession came from, people being obsessed with active. I did that for a week because I thought for some reason it's going to be better. It's not necessarily better. And what I mean by not necessarily, like, it's just not better. It's just different. So an active pickup is one that has a battery in it. It's got a preamp built into it, so it requires a battery. Can be a little bit cleaner, but again, there's a ton of people playing passive pickups, okay? And as far as gain stacking, yeah, if you're not getting enough from your first gain, you can always gain stack. I have an SG Strat and an LP. Do I need a 335? Nope, you do not. Your Les Paul is going to sound a lot like your 335. They sound a little bit different for sure. Yep, and they feel different. The best spot for a looper, that's a great question. It depends on what you're trying to do, but 99% of the time at the end of the chain is where you want that. And I mean after the all the way at the end. So after the noise gate, okay? Because basically you want to hear the delay and you want to hear the reverb and the flanger and whatever it is. You know, you think about it like a recorder, that's what it is. So whatever you're recording, you want it to go to the looper. If you put the looper at the front of the chain and you start playing guitar, then let's say you wanted the first patch that you're playing to have delay, well, you'd have to have the delay pedal on because here's the effect, or here's the loop, it's coming through, it hits the delay, and now your ears hear the delay. But what happens if you want the first patch to have delay but not the second one? Now you just have to have the delay on the whole time, okay? Now if you put the looper over here, it's hearing everything. So the first pass has the delay in it. Maybe the next pass you're taking the delay out and you're putting a flanger. And now that's printed, and now you want a totally different sound. And now you change your effects and what have you. Those are printed and recorded just like you recorded them on a record, and now you've got your third tone. So 99% of the time you want it at the end. The only time I say you would want it at the beginning is I have one gargantuan live pedal board that I have that has a looper at the front and a looper at the back. And the reason that I do that is if I want to tweak stuff on my pedals and on my amp, I have to play and then tweak. Play, tweak, play, tweak. And what I found is much easier is to just play something, put it at the beginning of my chain, play something into that looper, and then now it's going through my chain and I could sit there and adjust all the knobs on my pedals and my amp, and it's as if I'm playing that riff over and over and over again, and I can sit there and tweak. Yeah, that one's free. That's a cool move, actually. It really is helpful if you have the room on your board, you know. Okay, I'm glad Broken Treble said this. Okay, Broken Trouble, there is no best looper pedal. There's what's best for you. Okay, there really is. You have to investigate that. What are your needs? I won't even get into that because there's really so many different types of looper pedals, and it's what's best for you. The Ditto, if you just want a, super easy pedal to go to, the Ditto pedal by TC Electronic is a great one. I think it's less than $100, okay? 9s or 10s or heavier. What's your preference? Switch with guitars or same on everything? I play 8s and 9s now, Tone Monkey. For years I played 10s exclusively, and now I'm playing 8s and 9s. I got thinner strings. I love it. Is there a sound difference? I don't know. Some say that the thinner strings have more clarity. I can't say for sure that I've heard that because I'd have to A-B the same guitar and the same, right? I'd have to A-B everything, and it would have to do it immediately for me to hear a difference. So I'm going to be changing strings back and forth. So I don't hear much of a difference, but they do play much better, in my opinion. I like them, okay? I play classic 90s rock on my Les Paul. What gauge should I use? Currently using E-flat Paradigm, EB Paradigm. I don't know what that is. Okay, but you play what strings you want to play. Okay, Stevie Ray Vaughan played 12s. Billy Gibbons plays 8s. They're both good players, and they both sound great, and they both have a great blues sound, but it's just different. So that would be one of the things, Broken Trouble, that people obsess upon, and it has like 1% of 1% sound difference, okay? Playing difference, though, is everything. You're going to feel differently on those thinner strings, okay? So find some strings that resonate with you, that feel good to you when you play, okay? Okay, good. Looper with the modeling amp? Yep, there is one in there, John, and I use it all the time. Can I run a Kemper through a Katana? Why would you want to do that? Yes, you could. You could do that. You say, could you have it as a speaker? Well, I don't know for sure. I shouldn't answer that, but I think there is some sort of, I don't know for sure. I don't want you to blow anything up. Honestly, running through the Kemper through the Katana is like, I don't know. I could insert a goofy thing there, but it would be like running a Lamborghini through the Taco Bell line. Okay? Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay. Okay, let's keep going here. It's the feel thing for the strings. Indeed, yes. Oh, Ken's saying as a speaker. Yeah, you could, but the technology's there. What you would need to do to do that, I don't know, because there's several different types of katanas. But right now, I'm running my Kemper through just a speaker. It's actually called a Kemper cabinet, so it's made for that, but it doesn't have to be made for that. I could plug it through a 412 because there's an amplifier built in to the Kemper. So there's other questions that we would have to address before I could tell you for sure to do that or not. Plus, golly, you're going to be changing the sound of that Kemper a lot by running it through kind of a cheaper setup, if you will. Okay. Roy is saying, good day, Eric. Hope all is well. It is, my friend. It's fabulous. What is a good material for straps? The stock ones that come with the guitar are too small, and the material hurts my neck when it rubs. Well, I love these. I love these for just like quick go type bits. These are D'Addario or Planet Waves. These are super affordable. They have this cool little thing that kind of lock the strap on here. And for as many guitars as I have, I just went out and got like a dozen of these because I just need a strap that I can grab real quick. Now I do have other straps that stay on, like for instance, like this one. Ones that look a little bit nicer and what have you. So this is made by Couch Guitars, or made by Couch Straps. They make really cool guitar straps and camera bag straps, or camera straps, and that sort of thing, and they look kind of vintagey. And this one has like paisley impressions on it and stuff, and it's super cool. And they actually make all vegan products, so that's why I dig them. Obviously, leather. If you're a leather guy, that does work, and they don't. Well, I say they don't break. I have the original leather strap from this one from 1959, and I was like, oh my God, this is so cool, and I put it on, and it broke immediately. So, but it was a thinner one, you know. Okay. And it hurts my neck when it rubs. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Or too small. Yeah, try some different ones, but you know, they've got these really wide straps too for heavy guitars, and that definitely feels much better. Does the noise gate help remove the Fender single coil interference hum? It absolutely does, yeah. So when you're not playing, but as soon as you're playing, you're opening the gate. It's called the noise gate because it literally opens up a gate and it lets the sound through. So, but there's also something called masking, okay? This is a physics of sound phenomenon. It's called masking. So if one person is in a room and they're talking and you walk into that room, they could be far away, right? You will probably be able to decipher their conversation. If you walk into a party and there's 100 people in the room and they're all talking and it's right, and there's someone standing right next to you, you may not be able to make out what they're saying, and they're standing right next to you, because that's masking, because all these frequencies and all these different sounds are just covering up what it is that you're trying to hear. Okay, you've experienced this a million times, but that phenomenon is called masking. And so you're hearing the sound of your guitar and it's kind of noisy. The noise gate will take that out. When you play, the noise comes through, but so does your playing, but your playing is going to mask over the sound of that typically. So it's not going to be very, very audible. Okay? That's a great one. Good question. Broken table. Can I be your first apprentice? Maybe. Let's talk. Hello, Eric. Do you use a light pick with your acoustic and a heavier one with your electrics for tone and feel? I do, Drew. So I typically use, let me see what size these are. I think like anything from like a 0.88 and above. Yeah, these are 0.89. This is a Dunlop Ultex. These are my favorite picks. I normally wouldn't have said that, and I don't think I started saying that until I got these picks. These made a real difference to me. I just love the way they sound. They're real hard, as opposed to like a Fender pick that sounds more like plasticky when you drop it on the table. And it's not so much the dropping on the table that I'm concerned with. It's how does it sound against the strings, right? So a thicker pick, if they're too thick, the really thick picks kind of sound darker. Thin picks typically sound brighter, but they're brittle and they break, like this one that I was just playing, and it just snapped. So they do that. When I'm playing electric and I'm playing intricate solo type stuff, single notes, I want a thicker pick. Cool? When I'm playing big strumming, 6 strings, that sort of thing, all at once, I want a pick that gives, because I want to hit all those strings. Just like if you had long curly hair, you're going to use a brush with thin bristles. And if you're just, you got short, straight hair, then you could use a comb with solid bristles. That's how it works, right? So same thing with picks, just remember that. Yes, truism. Tone Monkey's asking, a good setup worth a couple hundred bucks on the value of your guitar? Well, they typically don't cost that much. So I told you Greg Ellis is setting up my guitar right now, and it's a Gretsch, so it's a little bit more troublesome than, say, setting up a Les Paul or something like that, because of the tremolo and some other bits and pieces. And he charges me $60 for that. So you shouldn't have to pay that much. I wouldn't pay over $100 for a setup. Honestly, I don't care who it is. There's somebody else who can do it great for more affordably. I've never paid more than $100 for a setup. But yes, it absolutely makes all the difference in the world in your guitars. Once I can afford to do that, I just love taking my guitars, and I do it twice a year. All my guitars go to the guitar doctor, and which is Greg Ellis, my guitar tech, and he looks over everything and makes it yummy, okay? So definitely worth that, friends. Listen, friends, I've got to go because we need to go over and look at our new studio right now, which I'll let you know more about shortly, but we need to measure and we need to do some stuff. So Mike and I are out of here. Thank you so much for joining me today. Friends, do not forget, if you're looking for some stellar tone, now this particular pedal, years in the making, many iterations of it because I wasn't satisfied. I am satisfied now. I love this pedal. You're gonna love it. It's gonna save you money if you get it because buying a tube screamer and an OCD will be way more than that, and you can't cascade them. And again, it's gonna take more real estate on your pedal board, which once you start buying effects, you're gonna get this very, you're gonna understand this, okay, for real. The other thing is the about a tube screamer is I didn't like that once you go past like 3 or 4, it doesn't continue to overdrive. So I'm like, well, why even have that? It was kind of like the Spinal Tap thing. Why don't you make these go up to this volume and just make that a 10? And he's like, well, these go to 11. This one actually responds. So if you want it to continue to drive, it'll do that for you. And we only have 6 of those now. Someone just bought one. They might have bought one while we're doing the show here. So, but inventory, it'll show up in real time on the website. The link for that's below. I love you guys. I'm out of here. See ya.